What's the win-win?
Peace in society.
Louder.
Peace in society.
Okay, good. We're also interested in peace in society. We don't want to see destructive groups in the world, isn't it? What else? Expose cheating. We want to expose cheating, right? We don't like cheating. We don't want to see that going on.
Help the victims.
It's all right.
Help the
Okay, raise your
victims.
hands.
Help the victims.
Okay, help victims and people who have been mistreated. We also want to help victims. We like to know how to help victims.
Individual autonomy.
We want to promote autonomy, right? We want, what did Prabhupada say, looking at from ISKCON perspective? He said the purpose of this movement is to create independently thoughtful people. That doesn't go good with all this stuff. Independently thoughtful people. Okay? Anything else here?
Protect people.
Good. Protect people. We are interested in protecting people. So, one more. He's on a roll with you.
Family values. Family values.
Family values. We want to promote stronger families. Okay? So, the first time I went to, after I had that meeting, actually I'll tell you another story, it's kind of funny. So I met this man who was the head of the organization, and I went to his event that day, that one-day event, and I brought a friend of mine who was a devotee who was working on his PhD in pastoral counseling, so like a therapist. So first of all, I wanted them to meet somebody who's smart, who's a Hare Krishna. Kind of take away any conception that you people are like not very well educated and all that. So we actually, afterwards we went to dinner, which was something bizarre. It was a vegetarian restaurant close to where they were, pure vegetarian restaurant. So there were three of us, my friend, the PhD, my wife was there, myself, the executive director of this organization, and two other people in his group. So it was a little awkward, you can imagine, the conversation. But have you ever heard of Ted Patrick? Does that name ring a bell? Goes way back. But Ted Patrick was the world's first big promoter of what they call deprogramming. So deprogramming means, in short, somebody doesn't like what you're doing, so they kidnap you, they take you someplace, they lock you up, and they more or less torture you. You know, like for Christian devotees, they would try to force devotees to eat meat, or try to force them to smoke a cigarette. Sometimes they put ice under people's arms, they keep them, you know, it's like that. It was a little torturous. Or sometimes it wasn't quite so violent, but sometimes they did violent. Anyway, Ted Patrick was the most famous people doing that in America. And later he was arrested because he broke some laws and the whole thing quieted down. Have you ever heard of Kirtanananda? Yeah. Okay. Kirtanananda was a big leader in the Hare Krishna movement. He got in a lot of trouble. He did a few illegal things. He got expelled from the movement. He went to jail for a while. Okay, so keeping that as the background, we're sitting at this dinner table, and this one gentleman breaks the conversation. He says to me, this is 1996, "How is Kirtanananda?" His first question. And I went something like this. Actually, with my face red, Kirtanananda is no longer a member of our movement. He broke some laws. He was expelled from our society 10 years ago, and he certainly does not reflect who we are or represent our community. And they said, "We're really glad to hear that." And I was surprised they didn't know that. So then it's, you know, it's conversation, it's, you know, mutual exchange and all that. So I just innocently asked, "How's Ted Patrick?" True story. The man said, "Actually, Ted Patrick was arrested a few years ago. We don't support the things that he did, and he certainly doesn't represent our organization." Okay? Win-win. We got some common ground here now, okay? You've had some people that did some really bad stuff. We've had some people that did some really bad stuff. Let's talk, okay? It's not like we're the bad guys, you're the good guys. We've had some issues here, both of us, so let's kind of talk about things. And then we can begin the conversation about, well, what exactly are you concerned about? And, you know, what makes a group? In fact, the following year we had a panel at their international meeting, and the panel was, can cultic groups change? Now for us, it was a big thing to be on a panel as a cultic group. It's almost like acknowledging that you're a cultic group. So it was like, do we want to do this or not? For them, it was a huge step to even consider, can a group that they've now labeled a destructive or a dangerous or harmful cult or a sect, can they change? It was like a big trauma for them. They got all kinds of feedback from people in their organization. People accuse them of selling out. How can you sit in a panel with a Hare Krishna? They must have brainwashed you, etc., etc., etc. But there was some degree of integrity there, so we could stand there and sit and discuss with them as they were offering their critique of, okay, we're concerned about the Christian movement because of this and this and this. And we could say, yeah, we had that problem. Yes, we had that problem. No, we don't have that problem. Here's what we've done to fix that problem. I remember the other devotee was on the panel with me. Her name was Radha Dasi, who just happened to have a degree from Harvard University Law School and just happened to be a law professor. And she was a woman, so I thought, okay, this is a pretty good presentation. And, you know, who the Christians are, it's not just people like me who dropped out of college and all that stuff. I fit, you know, the paradigm of the guy that joined the group. So I remember at one point they were asking her about women's roles. And she said, she explained that she had a 6-year-old daughter, or something, maybe 4, maybe younger. And one time her daughter was asking her, Mom, how come we're in the back and the men are in the front? And she explained that, you know, some Indian traditions, that's kind of the standard, and some ISKCON temples, it's there most of the time, it's women and men on the other side. But she explained to this group of 200-300 people, I was telling my daughter why the ladies stand in the back, and she said she proceeded to go to the front and punch the first man she could see. And Radha Dasi explained, I realized that I had an issue I had to deal with then. So, you know, if you're in the audience thinking these are mindless people, they're not thinking through these things, they become destructive, they don't have any individual autonomy, they've lost their family values, etc. And then they get a chance to actually talk to some Hare Krishnas that say, yeah, we've had our Kirtananandas and you've had your 10 Patricks, etc. You can find some win-win situation there. And a large part of the win-win is just, occasionally these people will call me up and say, we've got a family who's concerned, they think their son or daughter became a Christian member, can you help us find them? Or sometimes it's happened on a regular basis, I'll get a phone call from a reporter who will say they're doing a story and the anti-sect people told them to call us to get our side of the story. So it's not that they're fundraising for us. They're certainly not selling books. They're certainly not going to invite me to have a table selling those books at their next convention. It's a different kind of goals, but the goal is to bring down the temperature a little bit. And as a result of that, one last story. One year, the Scientology people came who, they're a little more abrasive and aggressive than we are, certainly. And we don't necessarily endorse their philosophy at all. But a lot of people started to come, and one year I overheard a conversation, and this one woman that organized it was saying, we shouldn't let any of these groups come. They have an open conference. We shouldn't let anybody come who's a member of any of these groups. It's a bad thing. They just come and they make trouble for everybody. None of them should come. Don't let any of these people come. And I was about 20 feet away. She said, except a Nudama. A Nudama can come, but nobody else should be able to come. And not so much me, but just because of the way I was interacting with them. Okay? Looking at this concept of really win-win, trying to act with integrity. So, you know, they point out what we're doing wrong. Yeah, you're right. Actually, it's wrong. That's wrong. We got a problem with that. We need to fix it. Or, yeah, that used to be a problem. And here's what we've done to try to fix it. Okay? So, a couple questions kind of led to that. Is that one more?
I'm just curious.
Yes.
Did Radha Mataji, how did she just accept like that situation?
That her daughter went up and punched the brahmachari?
Like, did she just accept that there needs to be a change, or did she answer for
I'm trying to remember what other details she went into in her explanation. Can somebody come and see whatever I did to this? maybe it's coming up. I don't know if she got into any more details. I think a lot of people came up and spoke with her afterwards. But the main point that came across is to understand that, okay, as a Hare Krishna member, there were things she wasn't comfortable about within the organization, and she was trying to address some of those that she thought appropriate. And there were other things that she just kind of went along with, even though she didn't like it. And the essential idea being she's not just some kind of thoughtless person. You know, I mean, anybody that's a member of any organization has issues with leaders to some extent or another. I mean, forgive me, I live in America, you know, enough said. It's like, whoa, you know. I live in Washington. It's like, whoa, you know. I'm not a fan of our current leadership at all. But I still live there. I got to deal with it. Okay? Is that right? Okay. Any other questions on that? Yeah.
I have a question. Like, a lot of the things that they have come from it, it's kind of like if they came to Krishna consciousness.
Real loud so they can hear too.
If these extremists came to Krishna consciousness, it would solve a lot of these problems that they are having issues with. So why are they so opposed to any other sort of cultish group?
These people,
Yeah.
why are they opposed to cultic groups? Come to the conference once in a while. I mean, there's a lot of sick stuff going on out there. There's a lot of sick stuff, you know. And frankly, we've had issues within our organization. I gave a presentation here at the first International Leadership Summit. International, right? ILS? ISKCON Leadership Summit. First ILS. Trying to remember the name of it now. Something to the effect of, it was like 1,100 presidents and other people, right? Wasn't it first? It was like 1,100 people.
First one was 1,200, second one was 1,000.
Okay, so lots of leaders from all around the world. And I made a whole presentation on the need for us to avoid cultic behaviors. Because that's another thing, by going here, I'm not the only one that goes either. Ravinda Sruprabhu's been a bunch of times. I mentioned my wife's been. Mahaprabhu from Europe, Radhadasi, probably 20 ISKCON people have gone. But part of it is because by hearing from your critics, you learn sometimes things that need to be fixed. Okay? Like we're working in North America now, we're drafting a policy against domestic violence. It's an issue in our society. It shouldn't be. We're based on love and trust and equality between the genders, etc., etc., etc. We have a big problem with domestic violence. And we need to talk about it, you know. One of the big things they talk about, very concerned about, is sexual abuse of children. Now, what's interesting is they also talk about not just like small alternative religious groups. They have like a big session when you're in the Catholic Church. And I think to a certain extent it's because we're there opens the door for them to look at other organizations as well. So I walk away with this with the understanding that human nature, we have potential for great good. If we're not careful, we can do great harm. We start out with very, very good intentions. So the need for transparency and accountability and all that stuff is very, very important. So again, I did this 18-minute presentation in front of the leaders based on what I learned from these people. But we need to be careful. And just in 30 seconds, very religious groups have a tendency to become harmful. Because one, we say God's telling us what to do. That's risky. Two, we tend to become closed, separate from us and them. Three, there's a very easy tendency for leaders to overstep their boundaries, thinking that they have some kind of spiritual authority which may be beyond what they actually have. And four, just, human society in general, with, bad behaviors pop up sometimes. So, how do we counter that? We need to be transparent, we need checks and balances, no peace above the law. Partly out of this, there's a partly out of this. This is one of the things that motivated. There's a seminar now in ISKCON. Someone's going to become a Diksha Guru. They have to take a 4-day training, which is not philosophy and that they've mastered all of that, but specifically talk about the challenges and opportunities, and particularly the challenges of being a Diksha Guru, and how you can overstep your boundaries, and what are the checks and balances, and how to protect yourself, and how do you know you're in trouble, etc. In part coming from this. Okay. I think we're the only movement in the world that has a seminar before you can become a guru. I mean, sure, there are Catholics, what's happening for cardinals and stuff like that. But I don't know of any Vedic community that does it. Anybody here know of any Vedic? Not a lot of people of Indian origin. I don't know of anybody that does. And I think it's like, it's one of the things that helps me go to sleep peacefully at night. To know that this organization is so self-reflective and so honest and so open with itself to acknowledge that there's potential problems even at such a high level of leadership, and we need to do the best we can to protect all of us from that. I think that's pretty cool. You know, and that allows me to go to these things, and when they talk about destructive groups, it's like, well, when's the last time you guys had a training course for, you know, you do that, you ought to learn from us. Last comment on this topic.
I often hear the argument, and you probably heard it yourself too, that restricting people from certain types of sense gratification actually leads them into doing, like, for example, restricting sex or illicit sex actually results in people building up to the point where they just can't handle it anymore, and then they do it in a way that isn't acceptable, you know. So
Catholics get accused of that a lot, with all the sex abuse of priests.
So how do you counteract that because it's a common one that I find?
Well, I'm not an expert on this topic, we can open the floor, but I think part of it is, one, there's no scientific evidence of that, and two, I mean, I would just, if you ask me that, I would say that's why in our tradition most of our people get married, because there's healthy outlets for one's sexual desire. And therefore, in our tradition, marriage is a very sacred institution to protect people from being able to make very, very deep commitments and focus on raising their families. And that's a healthy outlet. And if someone, at the same time, our tradition teaches that ultimately not the body, blah, 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 and therefore celibacy is promoted as a value. But in a mature society, one has to learn with how to balance that. And individually, some people may have a difficulty where they're not able to honestly acknowledge their problem with their sexual desires, which can lead to some kind of frustration like that, which is not a good thing. But it's part of making progress in life. That's it.
Also to add, yes, there is a chance for that, but also there's many examples who embrace that and they're good examples of actually abstaining from
Yeah.
and they don't do all this stuff.
Okay. So, let's get back to what we want to talk about next, which is listening skills. Okay? So we'll go through this introduction a little quickly because it's a little bit of going over some of the things you looked at already. On your handouts, page number 6, let's just read through this. Raja Bhumi, can you start out and read in there?
Should we?
Top of page 6, yeah.
Listening skills. Good listening is based on two principles. First, diagnosis must precede prescription. Second, understanding comes through listening.
Okay, if you go to a doctor's office because you fell on your moped or your bicycle or around here your big huge motorcycle and you hurt your arm and you walk in, the doctor takes one look at you and says, "Oh, don't worry, I can see what's wrong. I'm really good at open heart surgery and we'll schedule you this afternoon at 2 o'clock. You do have a lot of money, right? Are you going to stay for the operation?" Okay. Yuri says yes. Marsh, you need to talk to him. Okay. No, you're not going to do it. Why? Because the doctor didn't diagnose. When you go see a doctor, what's the first thing they do after they get your name and all those things? They ask questions. Thank you. They ask a lot of questions and they listen to you. Where does it hurt? It's my arm. How did it happen this morning? I fell on my bike. Blah, blah, blah. Is it this kind of pain? Then they decide what to do. So we have to listen. What's our tendency as brilliant people that all of you are when somebody comes to us with a problem? We assume things and we immediately tell them what they ought to do. Just like You're not moving anywhere. She's moving. Just like John B. said. Just like John B. John B, you're what, 22? 28. Okay, so just like John B, she knows she has 28 years of life experience. Obviously, whatever realization she has about my problem must be the true solution. Because she's so wise. So we all tend to think like that. And as religious people, we tend to think, well, God probably told me it too. Through my realization. So no, you got to ask questions first. You have to listen. Okay? And the second one, understanding comes through listening. The doctor needs to pay some attention to you. Okay? So we have to listen too. So let's just read through this quickly. You start.
Poor listening. 1. Ignoring, making no effort to listen.
Okay, we don't want to do that. Occasionally it's important, but 99.99% of the time it's not a good practice.
Pretend, listening, giving the